Today's speaker, Dr. Hemant R. Umaji, needs no introduction. However, it is a matter of pride and honor for me to acquaint you with this down-to-earth, outstanding academician. A graduate and postgraduate from GDC Mumbai, Dr. Umaji was mentored by none other than respected Dr. A.B. Surveyor. He has been an undergraduate and postgraduate teacher at GDC Mumbai right up to his superannuation. In addition, he has presented two concise textbooks, one each on imaging and one on oral medicine. Dr. Umaji was senior editor for the CBCT Compendium by IAO-MR. Dr. Umaji's endearing nature and diverse interests are evident from the brief video which comes up next.
Is such that principles we must follow, but in practice there are going to be a lot of variations. So that is what this title will tell us. Now, these two stalwarts, Dr. S.P. Surveyor and Dr. Annie John, I had the great privilege to be under them. Dr. Surveyor was my
Sir,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Your presentation is not being seen. So you have not shared your presentation, sir.
Oh God, sorry.
It's okay.
Now you can see, sir. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me also. Please
Yes,
tell me if something is wrong because I am not able to make out.
Yes, sir. Everything is fine, sir.
Now it's okay. No, yeah. So I was telling about Dr. Surveyor. He's my teacher, my guide, my mentor, and Dr. Annie John. I had the privilege of working with her, and she is also my teacher. As a UG, I have been a student, and as a PG, of course, as you know, that professor will be so busy that you have to interact with the associate professor. She was associate professor. I was lecturer as well as a PG student. So I learned everything about this subject under these two under the able guidance of these two great stalwarts, and I am really privileged, and I must acknowledge that without them I would be nowhere. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, remember the spelling Roentgen. He discovered the X-rays on 8 November 1895, and that also he discovered the X-rays accidentally. And the first thing he did after discovering the X-rays was that he took the X-ray of his wife's hand. His wife's name was Bertha, and he took the X-ray, and the exposure time was almost 15 minutes. In those days, wives used to be cooperative. If you try this in these days, it will be going to be a very tough job, and the wife will immediately contact a lawyer. So if you take this, look at this picture, lateral view of the, you will be worried about the cup, that what will happen to this particular cup. But when you look at the same picture in the AP view, you find that it is being lovingly carried by the mother. So this picture I wanted to show you to signify the limitations of the radiograph. That radiograph is a 2D image of a 3D object, and because we can only see the shadow, and it's only in 2 dimensions. We cannot appreciate what is happening in the 3rd dimension. So that is the major drawback of a conventional radiography. It is also that another thing which work keeps on repeating is 30% of calcium has to be removed or added to make it fully apparent on the radiograph, and post-treatment radiographs may be misleading. So these are the post-treatment radiograph. Maybe supposing what he means is, supposing you do periodontal surgery and do flap operation. So after 6 months, the patient is normal, pocket has disappeared, and bone formation may have started, but the radiograph will continue to show the bone loss. So post-treatment radiograph may be misleading. That is what he wants to convey. So these are the limitations of a normal radiograph, conventional radiography. Now these are 2 pictures. You can see here, this is the lingual foramen. I will first, Dr. Mishra had told, Dr. Satyaranjan Mishra said that it is mainly for the UG students. So lot of great part of this lecture will be for totally basic. That means only for the UG students. And if those who are faculty members or PG students may have to undergo this torture of going through totally basic things. So these are some landmarks which I will cover. This is lingual foramen, and if you take a occlusal view, you will be able to see the genial tubercles. But here it seems as a lingual foramen, and here is a mental foramen. Now this white line which is there is called as a lamina dura. The tooth is suspended in the socket, and this white line which is there, it is called as a lamina dura. This is a dentine, this is a root canal, and adjacent to the dentine there is a periodontal ligament space, and just adjacent to that you see this white line. So now they used to ask us, why does lamina dura appear white? And in those days, that we used to believe, and still when we used to teach like this, that there are something called as Sharp's fibers. Sharp's fibers is the part of periodontal ligament which is lodged into the cementum, and also Sharp's fiber is also the part of the periodontal ligament which is lodged into the bone. So when teeth are in occlusion, because of the pressure exerted by the teeth, the periodontal ligament on the bone, what happens is the more and more calcium gets built up, and therefore it used to appear as white. That is what we used to believe. But later on, a lot of research was done, and they said that it has nothing to do with the calcium content of the lamina dura area, but that particular bone is not different from the other areas. So why then the lamina dura appears as white? For PG students, I would like to say that sometimes they will ask you full question on lamina dura only. So you can hear me, no sir? Sometimes you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'll just keep on asking you again and again, because I don't know whether you are hearing me or not. So the PG students, they will be asked full question on lamina dura in health and disease. So they should prepare like disappearance of lamina dura, etc. But now the reason I'll tell you why lamina dura actually appears white. We used to teach like that in the Sharp's fibers theory. So here what happens is, if you see the eggshell, this is eggshell effect diagram is taken from White and Farrow, and if you see at the periphery of the egg, when the X-ray is passing, it has to pass through the greater length of the eggshell, and because it has to pass through the greater length of the eggshell, it will more X-ray photons will be absorbed, and therefore it will appear as a white. Whereas when it passes through the body of the egg, it has to pass through a very thin shell of the egg, and more X-rays or photons are not absorbed, and therefore it will not appear as a white line. So periphery will always appear as a white line. So in short, when you see that, supposing this is a lower premolar, and lower premolar has got this particular lamina dura, so here the bone is placed in such a way, like this diagram, that the X-rays have to pass through the entire length of the lamina dura, then it will appear as a white. Now this diagram I showed to tell you the important, the significant feature of lower mesial root of the lower 6. Work says that mesial root of lower 6, if you study, there will be 4 lamina duras and 4 ligament space. This is one lamina dura, second lamina dura, third lamina dura. So next time you see lower 6 X-ray, appreciate the 4 lamina dura. So why this happens? So you find that if you take a cross section of the lower 6 root, mesial root, it is like a dumbbell shape. Because it is dumbbell shape, it passes differently, and it passes, one lamina dura shadow will fall here, one will fall here, one will fall. So because the shape is different in cross section, the shadow will be different. So that is how it will look in a socket. You can see one lamina dura here, one here, one here. So this is a typical appearance of the lamina dura. Okay. Now there is another interesting landmark that when the inferior alveolar canal goes and opens into the mental foramen, we used to just teach it like a normal thing, but now later on they found out that when it goes forward, it takes a bend, and this bend is called as a genuflect. Means genu means knee, and bend. So it is taking a bend here, and then it opens buccally. So this is called as a genu, or it is also called as the anterior loop. So this part you have to remember, especially for the implantology people. So because it takes a bend, so sometimes if you take a cross section, you will get a figure of 8 appearance. So the canal will be a little at a higher level, or the foramen will be at a higher level, and therefore you have to be very careful about this particular genu or the anterior loop of the this near the mental foramen, inferior alveolar canal. And many studies have been done to study this in CBCT, etc., to find out how this particular loop is there. Okay. Now, some landmarks I just like to revise with the UG students. So I'll just ask you, what is this dark line? What is this dark line? So this is a median palatine suture. Why it can't be a fracture line? If it was fracture line, it would be zigzag, and it will not be having a corticated margin. So this is the median palatine suture. Then this W is the flow. This is the nasal. This is nasal cavity, and you find the centrally located nasal septum. So yellow arrow is the nasal septum, and this is the nasal cavity. What is the orange arrow showing? That is showing the inferior turbinate. Sometimes inferior turbinate shows mucosal hypertrophy, and it may be seen on the X radiograph. Now, remember that the nasal cavity starts from here and goes right up to the palate. It's a hard palate actually. So this is the hard palate area, or this is the floor of the nasal cavity. So remember, floor of the nasal cavity extends backwards. So that part you have to remember. Now this is that famous Y-shaped line of Ennis. The floor of the shadow of the floor of the nasal cavity superimposes over the shadow of the floor of the maxillary sinus in the shape of an inverted Y. So what is its significance? Supposing if a cystic lesion develops like this, in this case there is a cystic lesion, then it changes the configuration of the inverted Y-shaped line. So that if this is having convexity here, this is called as the anterior convexity. So there is a posterior bowing of the anterior wall of the maxillary sinus, which gives rise to change in the configuration of the this Y-shaped line of Ennis. So this is what you have to remember. Now, when you look at the posterior X-ray, there are three lines which you have to, three radio-opaque lines which are there. Two are lines and one is a band. One line is with the convexity downwards, very thin line, that is the floor of the maxillary sinus, convexity downwards. One is a then one band is there, thick band. This is a malar bone shadow, or it is called a zygomatic process of maxilla. Now, if you trace the zygomatic process of maxilla, it goes back like this. This is the zygomatic arch. It is going towards the zygomatic arch. This is the septum in the sinus. Now, this black arrow, what is it pointing at? This is the floor of the nasal cavity. So, horizontally running line is the floor of nasal cavity. Convexity downwards is floor of the maxillary sinus, and band is the malar bone shadow. It is called a zygomatic process of maxilla. What is the orange arrow pointing out? It is pointing at the coronoid process. So these are the important landmarks. When UG students will undergo examination, they will be asked to take X-ray. They have to identify these landmarks without fail. So that is the first thing they will ask you about landmarks, only because probably they are the most important things we must learn. Okay. Now this looks like eyes of a snake. This is the upper topographic occlusal view. These two radiolucencies look like the eyes of a snake. This is nothing but the orbital opening of a nasolacrimal canal. First, we used to think that this is a what we call it as a greater palatine foramen. They used to think that it's greater palatine foramen, but remember that X-ray have to pass through the entire length of that particular structure. Mental foramen also, when it passes obliquely, it will not be seen, but if it passes through the walls of the foramen and goes directly through the length of the foramen, then only you will see it. So here what happens, the centering point is on the tip of the nose, and because it is on the tip of the nose and nasolacrimal canal is on the side, you find that it passes entirely to the length of the nasolacrimal canal. So therefore this will be seen beautifully as a landmark on the upper posterior region. The greater palatine foramen is there in that region only, but it is not appreciated in this particular occlusal topographic radiograph. Incidentally, this also shows a adenomatoid odontogenic tumor with central and lateral incisor impacted. Okay. Now this is courtesy Dr. Ishwaran. I took the X-ray from him. So this is a You can see here, this is the malar bone shadow. This is another X-ray. You find here that premolar is carious, and we think that this is malar bone shadow. We think this looks less like this malar bone shadow, but there is some radiolucency here. So we took a different X-ray here. The apex is cut off. So better take a deeper X-ray. When the deeper X-ray is taken, we found that actually there is a tooth there, and this is a malar bone shadow. Sometimes the landmark can be mistaken for a pathology, and sometimes pathology can be mistaken for a landmark. So this is a very funny game. So you have to be very careful about identifying the landmark and also identifying the pathology. Now I want you to concentrate on this radiograph and tell me what is the pathology. You can see that the premolar is carious. So besides that, anything else? So if you see at the corner, work says that always study the corner of the radiograph. You can see here that there is a radiopaque structure. So we suspected a tooth, and this canal is there. This I think is called as a gubernacular canal. Gubernacular, it's something called as gubernaculum. And this is supposed to pull the tooth. There is gubernaculum testis in the abdomen, which similarly, gubernaculum means actually those who are horse riding. They have got those leather straps which drive the horse. So that is called as gubernaculum. Okay. So when we took a deeper X-ray, we found that there is an impacted canine which is seen. Okay. Now, the first X-ray, this IOPA, I wanted the UGs also to identify. They can see that the canal is, the pulp chamber is very large, and you find the roots are dwarf. So this is called as a taurodontism. Taurodontism, pulp chamber is large and roots are dwarf, and difficulty will be to extract with the cow horn, and difficulty will be for root canal. So this is called as taurodontism or bull's tooth. For PGs, can they identify what this structure is, what this X-ray shows? It shows that the teeth are rudimentary, not formed, enamel is not formed, roots are not formed, and they look like a deformed teeth, and they are called as a ghost teeth, and this particular condition is called as a regional odontodysplasia, or it is called as ghost teeth. Now this particular OPG, if you see, there are all the roots are only missing, and in this, when you see an X-ray like this, where the roots are missing, not formed at all, or they are formed and resolved, then it is called as a dentinal dysplasia, dentin dysplasia or rootless teeth. So these are some rare abnormalities, so which I wanted to share with you. Now tube shift technique, which supposing you don't have occlusal X-ray film, or you don't want to spend, the patient doesn't want to spend for CBCT, etc., and you want to identify whether the impacted tooth is buccally placed or palatally placed, then what do? Then we take two X-rays. First X-ray we take normally, and second X-ray we shift the tube distally. So how to say that this tube is shifted distally? Here you can see only partly the canine, and you can see greater portion of the canines. So when the tube shifted distally, the tooth also shifted distally. Therefore, it is suggestive of a palatal placement. So how this is working? Supposing you are traveling in the train, and if you are looking at the hill, and on top of the hill there is a tree. The tree moves with you, but the electric pole which is there moves in the backward direction. So object which is closer to your eyes will move in the backward direction. Object which are distant will move with you. So this is called as a parallax technique. So same lingual, opposite buccal. So if it moves in the same direction as the tube, it is placed lingually or palatally, and opposite is placed buccally. So this part you have to remember. Sometimes they may ask short note on the parallax technique. Then now to study a little bit about the role of radiology in endodontics, the conventional, you can see that this particular patient complained of severe pain. We took one X-ray, and it didn't show much. Somebody said angulation is more. How to make out the angulation? In bisecting angle technique, the rays are directed 25 degrees downwards, 25 to 30 degrees downwards. So the buccal cusp shadow will fall down. So this is a buccal cusp shadow, and this is a palatal cusp shadow. So if the separation is more, means that the angulation is more. So if we repeat the X-ray with less angulation, we could see distal caries. We took wide wing radiograph, it showed still better. So importance of correct angulation to diagnose a particular pathology. So that is very important. Okay. Now, occlusal X-ray, bite wing X-ray is very important to study early proximal caries, then crestal bone loss, pulp stone, pulp chamber, then pulp horns, etc. So sometimes in Viva they will ask you, IOPA also shows proximal surface, bite wing also shows proximal surface. So why bite wing is preferred? Sorry that I'll go into little detail because you wanted me to teach the UG students, so I'll tell this little bit in detail. So why you prefer bite wing radiograph if more than the periapical? So the answer to that is, in bite wing radiograph, the centering point is at the occlusal plane level. Centering point is at the occlusal plane level, and the rays are directed at right angles through the interproximal surfaces of the teeth to be radiographed. Whereas in bisecting angle technique, the centering point is at the apical region, and the rays are passing obliquely. So you will not be able to see proximal surfaces that clearly on the, theoretically speaking, that clearly on the periapical X-ray or a bisecting angle technique, whereas in bite wing you will be able to see it better. Here you can see beautiful pulse tones. No, sometimes you, on the X-ray, only X-ray is shown to you, you are not seeing the patient, and you see a white linear structure with radiolucency. You can suspect that this may be a abrasion defect. Sometimes buccally there is caries, and deep caries, it will look like this. Buccally or root caries may look like this, and such teeth, no, occlusally they look normal, but patient keeps on complaining, and gingiva is grown there. So if you do cursory examination, you may miss it also. But when you probe that area, suddenly probe will sink inside, it will go inside, and you will get a carious defect. Okay. Now this patient, you should see the oral cavity of this patient. At a CE junction, there is deep caries, and it is generalized. All the teeth are affected, little bit of candidiasis. He also had xerostomia. And if you see the X-ray, X-ray shows that deep burrowing caries at the CE junction. So what you would suspect? So you will suspect radiation caries, and this particular appearance is described by White and Farrow as an apple core type of appearance. You can see how it resembles a core of an apple, because in the radiation caries, the radiation after radiation therapy, this doesn't happen after radiation diagnostic radiography. It only happens after radiation therapy, remember. And the saliva is so less, as the xerostomia is there, and because of that all this takes place. Nowadays they believe that even that there is direct effect on the teeth also of the radiation. Now one X-ray, P stands for pulse tone. What is the pathology in this radiograph? You see that there is a radiolucency here. This is called as a internal resorption. It is continuous with the pulp chamber, and it's called as a internal resorption. These are few cases where we should be useful in the diagnosing and treating for the endodontic cases. 3 radiolucencies are there, but you will require root canal for only one patient, that is the central patient. This radiolucency is the incisive foramen. Through the incisive foramen, you can see the ligament space, and the root apex is intact, lamina dura is intact. That means it is not a periapical, it is just a landmark. If you shift the X-ray, shift the centering point, the incisive foramen will come in the center. Then here, if you see, this is also in the midline, this is nasal cavity, and this is a heart shape or oval shaped radiolucency. This is a median palatine cyst or nasopalatine cyst. Because lamina dura is intact, ligament space also is seen. Here, of course, the lamina dura is missing. Large radiolucency is there, smooth round continuation corticated, and if you see the 2 teeth, central incisor has got a large root canal. It has got the apical foramen which is open, and here the apical foramen is very thin, and the canal is becoming narrowing. Why this is happening is because this tooth has received trauma in the formative phase. Odontoblasts are dead, dentinogenesis is not taking place, so canal remains wide open, and apical foramen also wide, and there is slight resorption of the apex. So all these points are because the tooth has received trauma in the formative phase. One interesting thing I will tell you, that when you are seeing such cases where tooth has received a trauma and there is the canal is wide, observe the adjacent teeth. One of the teeth might show full calcification. So here, if you see, there is calcified canal, and here it is a wide canal. So this is a very strange phenomena. Maybe the amount of trauma received by this particular tooth may be less as compared to this, or this may show how each individual reacts differently to their different situation. Now, this X-ray I show, actually it is taken from Engel. That is a textbook of endodontics, and if you can see here, the second premolar, you can see the canal fully going up to the apex, but the first premolar, if you see, it goes up to a particular level and then it suddenly disappears. When such a thing happens, you know that there is a bifid canal. Now, the second thing you have to remember is, if you take a tube and direct the rays distally, this is done while doing the RC diagnostic X-ray. That means you have opened the root canal, not in this case, but you have opened the root canal and you have put the RC instruments or GP points. One is there in the mesio-buccal canal, one is in the mesiolingual canal, and one is in the distal canal. If you direct the rays distally, then the mesio-buccal instrument shadow will fall distally. Because of the direction of the X-ray, it will go distally, and mesiolingual will come mesially. So the shortcut to remember it is mesial is lingual. Mesial is lingual. So direct the rays posteriorly, and the mesial canal is the lingual canal, and the distal canal with the instrument seen inside is the distal canal is the buccal canal. So that is the point which I wanted to make. Cyst, granuloma, and abscess. Cyst will show the smooth, round, continuous, and corticated border, and the granuloma will show very demarcated but not corticated. And the abscess will show diffuse radiolucency. So this is the typical periapical lesion, and many times it is not advisable to radiographically differentiate, because this patient with a cyst may present with an abscess because of secondary infection, or here even if it looks like an abscess, it may not be clinically be presenting as an abscess, but still sometimes we are asked full question on periapical lesions in exam. Then you have to know this, that how they describe the granuloma will be very demarcated but not corticated, cyst will be corticated, and this will be diffuse. These 3 points you have to remember. Okay. Now, interesting thing about this again is given by Ishwaran sir, that this particular radiograph, if you see, this is a blunderbuss apex, funnel shaped apex. So either it is root formation is taking place or there is some pathology. So if you see here, even the premolar is looking like this, and the lamina dura is continuous around it. Lamina dura is continuous around it. So this is normal. But if you see central incisor here, the lateral incisor has a lamina dura, but central incisor does not have lamina. Instead of that, there is a periapical lesion. So this means here the root formation is not taking. This is not a blunderbuss apex, but this is actually pathology has set in. Now, one third interesting phenomena we noticed when I was a student, and I saw this patient like this, and there is a radiopaque body. So we wondered what this is. First, we thought that patient has received trauma and the apex is fractured. But if the apex was fractured, then how is that the apex is looking fully calcified and the canal is looking canal is wide? So then I asked Dr. Sarver, so he said that nature's method of closing the apex. So that is called something called the osteodentin is formed, and osteodentin will close the try to close the apical foramen. So this is what is the thing which we learned. Now this is called as a work has said that in the lower anterior region you get what is called as a inverted conical flask type of appearance in the cyst. But if the cyst keeps on growing, sometimes it happens so fast that the buccal cortical plate is not expanded, and there is an aperture there. So subperiosteal bone deposition doesn't take place. There is an aperture, and it gives rise to what is called as a cyst in cyst appearance. This is called as a cyst in cyst appearance or a dorsal cyst, something like that. Now, supposing if the periapical lesion is there and it is growing close to the antrum. When it grows close to the antrum, inside the antrum, there, as you know, there is floor of the bony floor. After that, there is a antral mucosa, and between that, there is a periosteum. So the periosteal layer of the subperiosteal layer of the antral mucosa will lay down new bone, and always the bone will try to always that particular subperiosteal bone tries to separate the pathology from the sinus. So that is what gives rise to this peculiar appearance, which is called as a halo effect. It looks like a god with the halo around it, his head. So it is called as a halo effect. And so this was described by Wirth, and then White and Farrow described what is called as mucositis. So what he said that supposing there is a halo effect, adjacent to that, the mucosa also undergoes proliferation. It also tries to separate the pathology from the sinus. It wants to keep the sinus healthy. So then it is to be called as a mucositis. So mucositis is a misguiding word because there is radiation mucositis, etc. But remember, this is a sinus mucositis, which is described by the White and Farrow. Okay. 3 radio opacities are there. You find fine. That used to be good Viva question for UGs, that how to differentiate between periapical cemental dysplasia and condensing osteitis. In condensing osteitis, the tooth is carious or filled. There is a periapical rarefying osteitis. Adjacent to that, there is a radio opacity. So the radiolucency surrounded by radio opacity is condensing osteitis. Here what happens is radio opacity is in the center and it is surrounded by radiolucent halo. So this is called as a periapical cemental dysplasia. Here you find that it is more common in the lower anterior region. More than one tooth is affected. Age is more than 40, and it is always common in females, more common in females than in males, and this is called as PCD. Nowadays it is called as POD, periapical osseous dysplasia. First, Wirth used to call it as periapical osteofibrosis, and now again we have come back to the osseous terminology. Whereas first in the interim period they started calling it as PCD, periapical cemental dysplasia. Then they found that this particular radio opacity doesn't contain cementum; it is actually bone only. So then now again they have started the word called as a periapical osseous dysplasia. So POD. Now, what is the third radiograph? Is a very interesting phenomena that is called as cementoblastoma. So here what happens is that the cementoblasts are there and they lay down this particular tumor-like mass of cementum, and through the radio opacity of this cementoblastoma you cannot see the root outline, and around that there is a radiolucent halo of the capsule. So cementoblastoma is actually a tumor of the cementoblast which covers the root of the posterior teeth, and then it has got the same opacity as the root, but through that we cannot trace the outline of the root outline. Whereas if it is hypercementosis, root outline is traceable, canal is traceable. Here it appears as a bulk surrounding the root of the tooth. So this is a cementoblastoma. So these three things you have to remember. Then Wirth has also described Densin dente. If you want to study odontomes very well, then you must read Wirth. That chapter in Wirth is excellent for odontome. So he has included Densin dente as a part of the odontome. Then he used to call it as a dilated odontome. So there is one condition called as fleur de lis. It's a French emblem. It looks like a flower. So when the enamel line track is there, it gives rise to a dilatation of the root and it looks like a flower. And so this is called as a fleur de lis type of appearance. Now another pathology is there. So this particular patient used to keep on getting swelling. And once the swelling was there, they used to drain it and they used to put the root canal filling. After filling is done, again he'll come back. And then again they will remove the filling. Again they will try to do the root canal. But then later on, they said ultimately patient got fed up and the doctor also was frustrated. So he removed the tooth. When we removed the tooth, we found a groove here. So this is called as a palatal radicular groove. Actually, we should have diagnosed it before starting the treatment because bone loss was more and there is a groove seen here. So this is called as a palatal radicular groove. Just remember it as a rare pathology, but sometimes you may encounter it. And such cases you have been treated with the endodontist along with the periodontist can maybe treat it. If cyst is present but the tooth is missing, then it is a residual cyst. If the cyst was present, it was treated maybe surgically, and then you get this particular donut type of appearance. It's a healing cyst. So this is a healing cyst of donut appearance of a healing cyst. If you want to be staunchly Indian, then you can call it as Medu Vada appearance. Okay, now if the root canal is done very nicely, then the lesion will disappear and you get a periapical healing like this. So this is what we see. Now there is always a fight between endo department and radiology department because they will send the patient after doing something at 11:45 when 12:30 is the lunch time, and they will keep on troubling us. They will say we want urgent X-ray, we want urgent X-ray, and then sometimes they will just the OPD is very and then reaches peak at 11:45. Then they immediately send down for urgent X-ray. So once we give the urgent X-ray, they don't give the appointment or they don't do urgent work for the patient. Only the X-ray is urgent. Then we try very hard to convince the patient that taking the X-ray is not going to sort out your pain. So only X-ray they want to give urgent, but appointment they will give after 10-15 days. So that is the always the quarrel between OD radio and endodontics. But luckily now this radio visiography has come. So radio visiography is what happens is there is a sensor. You put the sensor in the patient's mouth, expose it to the X-rays, and immediately X-ray will appear on the picture will appear on the screen, computer screen, and it's an instantaneous image. So there is no need to go to the radiology department or no radiology department. Even if it goes to radiology department, they can transfer it to that endodontics, but the image is produced immediately. You don't have to go to the dark room. So dark room is eliminated. So that is the point which we have to make. You can hear me, no, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I'm going okay, no, or I'm.
No, sir. Fine, sir.
Okay. So the computer people, they use different language, CCD, charge coupled device. So I used to think that charge coupled device is a honeymooning couple. So there is a couple which is charged, but actually it is nothing to do with that. It is some physics is there behind that. There is a hole and pair type of a combination, and therefore it is called as a charge coupled device. Now new method has come that is called as photostimulable phosphor plate, and there it is doesn't have a cable and it is flexible like a IOPA. You can put it in the patient's mouth and then it is fed it to this machine and you can get a good radiograph. So this is another plate, another method by which you can get a digital radiography. Okay. Now the advantages of RVG is that the instantaneous picture is there. Exposure time is almost 1/10, and there are tools for modification. You can make it dark, you can make it light. You can measure the instrument, you can make a measurement of the root canal, etc. Measuring instrument device software is there, and you can send it to some specialist if you want to consult somebody, teleradiology. But disadvantages are that rigid sensor is there, only 2 to 3 teeth are seen. Problem of sterilization, so you have to use a plastic cover for that, and life of sense, it's a very expensive one. Resolution is less than IOPA, but that the eyes cannot detect. So slowly, I think RVG digital radiography will replace IOPA films. Now we'll go into deeper water and study the OPG. OPG is very interesting radiograph. You can see here so many beautiful landmarks are seen, condyle. Then you can see posterior wall of the maxillary sinus. This is the innominate line of the OPG, and there is one important landmark that is called inverted teardrop that is called as the pterygomaxillary fissure. This is the articular eminence. This is the condyle. Then hard palate, soft palate, tongue shadow also is seen, and this is a submandibular gland fossa. This is hyoid bone. This is styloid process. So many important landmarks are visualized. Huh? Okay. Now this sometimes the general radiologist will make the X-ray very dark, and somehow the contrast is not good. So you may mistake that there is a caries in the premolar area here. There is maybe caries or here. But actually, this may not be caries. I can be sure or confident that caries is there in this upper 7 or this lower 7. This definitely looks like caries, but other areas, without taking IOPA, don't start any treatment. Also, IOPA or white wing is indispensable for diagnosing proximal caries or diagnosing caries, and OPG is for general evaluation of the patient. Then there is one dark line here seen. This is called as a palatoglossal shadow. Here you can see the hard palate. Behind the hard palate is a soft palate, and this is the tongue shadow. So between the palate and the tongue, there is palatoglossal shadow. This may be mistaken for a fracture. So you must be aware of this particular landmark. Okay. Now this diagram I have taken from White and Farrow. What he says that there is an uneven magnification also. The main drawback of OPG is the distortion, magnification, and unsharpness. So distortion, magnification, and unsharpness. And here what happens is, suppose if you see three structures are the inferior alveolar canal may be placed close to the lingual cortex, it may be placed it may be in the center, or it may be close to the buccal cortex, and the rays are directed upwards. If the rays are directed upwards, and when you take, supposing you are taking X-ray on when the left side is being exposed, the tube is on the right side. So if it is placed lingually on the left side, it is going to cast a shadow at a higher level. So this is what they are trying to say, that inferior dental canal placed closer to the lingual cortex is projected higher, and that should not be, and therefore you should not do any measurement for implant. So the landmark may appear to be at a place where it is away, it is not exactly correctly depicted on the OPG. So that is a drawback of the OPG that you have to remember. Now this lady is carrying two sons, one SUN son and one SON son. So SON son she is holding by the hand, and SUN she is apparently carrying on her basket, and she is happily smiling. Both the sons are going to be a source of heat. So the sons will not like this statement, but they ultimately give a source of heat. So why I showed this diagram, this photograph, that this particular shadow, this is a OPG showing a multilocular lesion, two teeth are impacted, one tooth is displaced, and it may be a benign tumor, or it may be a OKC, but OKC less likely anyway. But what is this shadow? This enlarged shadow. So this is called as a ghost of this particular tooth. This is the ghost of the opposite side molar which is displaced. So this is young boy, roots are not formed, and then that is showing the ghost. So ghost image is seen when the patient is having a ghost image is seen when the object is placed between the center of rotation and the tube. Object is placed between the center of rotation and the tube. The PGs will understand, and the PGs should read the book called as Langland for panoramic radiology. That is the best book to study for Langland. Okay. Now there is a case with a fracture trauma, and you can see one radiolucent line here. Is this the only evidence of trauma? No, there is a radio opaque line also. When there is a fracture, there may be superimposition, and because of the overriding of the fragments, and that also is suggestive of a fracture. And then there is another thing unusual in this radiograph is the elongated styloid process. You can see how elongated the styloid process is. That is called as the Eagle syndrome. Okay. Now, I want the PGs to identify these two dental pathologies. OPG is best to study generalized dental pathology. So if you see the upper X-ray, you can see that the crowns are looking like a square shape without the enamel. Enamel is very thin or almost absent. So this is like this is what is called as this is seen as amelogenesis imperfecta. So crowns are square. Here if you see canals are calcified, C junction is very prominent, and the tooth is looking bulbous. The crown is looking bulbous and root is looking thinner and it is calcified. This is dentinogenesis imperfecta. So amelogenesis imperfecta, dentinogenesis imperfecta. And if you study in detail, there is a lot of variations in this enamel hypoplasia, then hypoplastic enamel, then some condition in which you can put the probe inside, drive it with pressure, and dentinogenesis also shields type 1, 2, 3. All this you have to study at the PG level. This is just for you to identify how, show you how OPG helps you to diagnose this particular condition. Now this is a quiz for the PGs, that I want you to identify what are these multiple radio opacities seen in the mandible. What are these multiple radio opacities seen in the mandible? So, sorry. So this is a florid osseous dysplasia, and sometimes you can see also the cystic lesion. Multiple cystic lesion may be seen. So we wondered how that florid osseous dysplasia also what cystic lesion. So White and Farrow mentions that it will coexist with the simple bone cyst. It will coexist with the simple bone cyst. So that you remember, florid osseous dysplasia. It is similar to periapical cemental dysplasia, and this will remain like this and no treatment may be immediately required. But supposing sometimes it grows in size, then it may behave like a sequestrum and start behaving like osteomyelitis. Then you have to surgically remove that particular the osseous material. Okay. Now this is a quiz which is common nowadays. You may encounter such type of a picture recently after the COVID. So what is this due to? So this is a very interesting landmark. This was an interesting artifact. So nowadays patient is wearing the mask, and then mask has got a nasal clip. So that nasal clip, when we ask the patient for OPG, till the last minute we don't ask him to take out the mask, because we are also scared that patient may transmit the virus and all that. So at the last minute, somebody will ask him to take the mask down. So he'll take the mask down. So nasal clip which is there comes and lies down near here, and that shadow will fall there. So that is the shadow of the nasal clip. This is an unusual landmark, artifact which is encountered these days. Okay. I want you to identify which side is the pathology. You can see here, this is the maxillary sinus, and this is also maxillary sinus. So here if you see, the maxillary sinus should have convexity towards the center. Here the convexity is going backwards. So there is a posterior bowing of the anterior wall of the maxillary sinus. This is the pterygomaxillary fissure. Again, just remember this landmark. And if you see here, lateral incisor is broad. The canal is broad. So this is a radicular cyst. This was a case of a radicular cyst. We can see here how the CT scan showing the radicular cyst, which is causing posterior bowing of the anterior wall of the maxillary sinus. Okay. Now this is just to lighten the mood. Some of you must have fallen asleep. One thing good about this online seminar is that you can fall asleep, you can yawn, you can leave this place and go and eat something, have tea, coffee. Very somebody is crying. He's justifiably bored. So, so this cartoon says that man comes back home and he says, "When did your mother get here?" So, how to interpret this cartoon? I think the how to interpret the cartoon.
Yes.
So here what happens is there is a broom here. If you see here broom, and as you know, the witches will travel on the broom. So he is hinting at that. So it is little difficult to diagnose this, interpret this particular cartoon because we miss this broom. So the broom is the hint in this cartoon, and the wife is looking angrily at him. So these are called as lock horns. So here also there is a hint, but it is difficult to. There is a OPG showing four third molars impacted, but there is one pathology here. So if you see here, you can see that there is a. If you follow the arrow, you can see that this arrow is going like this. So there is a cystic lesion here. So this is the hint. So this white line. So this is a cystic lesion. When we took CBCT, we could see that there is a cystic lesion which is covering the third molar, which is impacted. It is called dentigerous cyst. If it was a benign tumor, it will show trabecular inside. Now the interesting thing is that White and Farrow has in the recent edition has called it as a saddle shape. That when the cyst is growing close to the antrum is having air. So cyst grows without any restriction and it grows very fast into the antrum and it compresses the air space of the antrum and it gives rise to saddle shape of the air space. Sorry. It gives rise to saddle shape of the airspace. It looks like a saddle shape of the. So this is called as a saddling effect of the cyst. Okay. Now I want the PGs to identify this. What is the pathology in this particular condition? You can see here that there is a periodontal bone loss, and let's see the condyle. Condyle is looking different. So either it can be ankylosis because there is no joint space seen. Here there is joint space is visible, here not seen. So either it's a ankylosis or it may be osteoma or something, osteochondroma. So what is the point in favor of this being a ankylosis? If I ask like that, then you look at the antigonial notch. If the antigonial notch is prominent, vertical height of the ramus is small, it is more likely to be ankylosis. So antigonial notch is prominent compared to the other side, it is more likely to be ankylosis case. Okay. Now, again to come back to the work says that there are 4 changes which can be seen. It can be decalcification, destruction, sclerosis, changes in the bony architecture, etc. So I put this because sometimes you know what happens because of wearing the gene for longer time, it will the threads will start becoming thinner and thinner. That is decalcification. Trabeculae become thinner and less radio opaque. Destruction means through and through aperture, the hole will be seen. Then sometimes more bone is getting deposited, so that is called as sclerosis. And sometimes there is change in the bony architecture. Now, if you see these 3 radiographs, the central one is a normal one. Here you find that there is rarefaction of bone and trabecular is sparse and the bone marrow is large. And here there is bone marrow is very tough. Bone marrow is almost disappeared. It is giving rise to orange peel type of appearance. So this is a case of a fibrous dysplasia. This is normal patient. Here the bone marrow is hyperplastic. That is called as erythroid hyperplasia. And such a picture you will get it in thalassemia where there is increased demand on the bone marrow to produce a hemoglobin. Okay. Now this is this I have included because how to interpret the radiograph. So this is covered very nicely by White and Farrow. He gives these 5 steps: localize the lesion, study the border, evaluate the internal structure, effect on the adjacent, study the effect on the adjacent structure, and formulate the radiographic diagnosis. So these 5 steps will just give example and cover it fast. That location of the lesion. A cystic lesion is there and it is around the apex, so radicular cyst. Cystic lesion is there, it is around the crown of a tooth, dentigerous cyst. Cystic lesion is there between 2 teeth, it may be OKC, KCOT, etc. Now globulomaxillary cyst is no longer considered as a valid entity, it is supposed to be a odontogenic cyst only. So in the past they used to say between lateral incisor and the canine, inverted cone shape, inverted pear shaped appearance is globulomaxillary, but now it is not considered as a pathology. Now very interesting description. We also used to teach that cyst is like a balloon filled with water and when it expands, it gives rise to expansion on all sides, and as soon as it encounters the periosteum, subperiosteal layer of the osteoblast will lay down new bone and to give us the expansion. Again, that resolves, again new bone is formed. So it is a balloon filled with water. But what White and Farrow said in the recent edition, that it is a balloon filled with water. Now suppose any give an example. You take a balloon filled with water and keep it on a flat table. If you keep it on a flat table, one surface of that balloon will become flat. So it's very interesting that, and in the past I remember that somebody had said that why globulomaxillary cyst appears as an inverted pear shape, because of the two teeth. If the two teeth were not there, it would be a rounded structure, rounded or oval structure, because the presence of the teeth, the shadow is looking like that. So that is the point which he wanted to make. Okay. Supposing lesion is above the inferior alveolar canal, then it's a odontogenic lesion, or in this case it may be because it interdentally it is going is scalloped interdentally, it may be traumatic bone cyst. If it is within the canal, then it is more likely to be, if the lesion is present within the canal, it is more likely to be a neurological lesion, neurogenic tumor. And if it is below the canal and close to the lower border of the mandible, it may be a salivary gland, that is the depression, that is the Stephanus bone cyst. So this is the location of the lesion. Another lesion, location of the lesion point is, supposing the multilocular lesion is there and it is only on one side close to the posterior border, it is called inferior border expansion, which is unilateral and inferior border expansion with root resorption, benign tumor. It is more likely to be benign tumor. If it is crossing the midline, as in this case, you can see here multilocular lesion which is crossing the midline. It is coming from here, right up to here, and without expansion, it is spreading along the bone marrow spaces. It is more likely to be OKC, or nowadays in the meanwhile it was called KCOT. Now again they are going back to OKC, odontogenic keratocyst. If multilocular lesion is there both the sides, then it is going to be cherubism, like that. Now borders of the lesion. Now when Wirth described first, he used 3-4 terminologies and they were taken as synonymous. That means corticated, hyperostotic, sclerotic, and all these terminologies, they used to be same. But now White and Farrow says that corticated means a line, thin line. Sclerotic means little thicker than a thin line. So the word sclerotic can be used for this particular structure which is looking sclerosed, whereas the thin line which is there is called as corticated. And scallop means it is having the particular scalloping in between the roots, and there is a traumatic bone system. Okay. Base and promontory appearance, borders of the lesion, irregular like this is the land which is projecting inside the sea. Sorry, land which is projecting inside the sea, and this is the sea. There is a bay and the promontory. Typical appearance given by Wirth. So this is a malignancy, and multilocular lesion scallop margin is seen in case of a benign tumor. Now, another two interesting words he used. They are called as a permeative border and blending border. So what is a permeative border and what is a blending border? He said both are same. That means both the lesions are gradually merging with the normal bone, adjacent normal bone. They are gradually merging, but the permeative border is to be reserved for the radiolucency, that is a malignancy, and the blending border is to be reserved for the bony pathology or radio-opaque structure which is gradually merging with the bone. For example, here there was a case of a malignancy in a young man, and he had big lesion with complete destruction of the ramus. But here if you see there is radiolucency which gradually merges. So this is to be called as a radiolucency gradually merging is to be called as a permeative. And here is the case of a fibrous dysplasia. We can see you can see the laminar lower border of the mandible very clearly here. It is disappeared here, and this is a fibroosseous lesion or ground glass appearance. And here you can see that it is gradually merging with the adjacent bone. And this is the word used to be used is blending border. Incidentally, I think Dr. Kritika madam said that everybody is now scared of the word ground glass because that is a typical appearance on CT scan in the lungs in corona patients. So that is like a very dangerous terminology. So there is very interesting statement she made. Now internal structure, after the borders, internal structure, totally radiolucent cyst, then within septa and trabeculae, it could be benign tumor. Then internal structure, totally radiolucent cyst. If specs are seen, AOT. If there is a totally radio opaque, like tooth-like structure, can be a odonto. Now, question to the PGs or even to UGs. This is central incisor. This is central incisor. So why this particular central incisor, which I am now pointing, why this is appearing large? Why this central incisor appearing large compared to this central incisor? So the answer to that is that that particular central incisor is impacted. Because it is impacted, it is at a higher level. Because it is at higher level, it is closer to the tube. An object which is closer to the tube will appear as a magnified. So that is the answer which you have to give. Now, effect on the adjacent structure. If it's a benign tumor, it will give rise to multilocular lesion, inferior border expansion, and the blunt resorption. If it's a malignant tumor, patient keeping tobacco there develops malignancy. It gives rise to floating teeth appearance, but the roots are not, they are resorbed but not blunt resorption. It is called as a spiked resorption. It becomes pointed because it is resorbed from the side, and therefore it gives rise to a pointed appearance that is called as a spiked root resorption of malignancy. So an effect on the adjacent structure, another example, that if it's a benign, if it's a fibrous dysplasia, you can see a lower border here, it has thinning of lower border, ribbon shaped, and you can see the inferior alveolar canal is raised upwards, it is fibrous dysplasia. If inferior alveolar canal is raised, pushed downwards, it is likely to be a benign tumor, that is a ossifying fibroma. Effect on adjacent structure. If a periodontal tooth is the periodontal abscess is there, then condensation of bone takes place, and here irregular bone loss is seen in malignancy. And then you find that the bone loss is almost parallel to the original lamina dura. Here it is highly irregular. So condensation, peripheral condensation is suggestive of infection which is seen in the periodontal abscess. Okay. Now we'll go to differential diagnosis. This I show it as a radiographic sieve. In the past, when we were students, each examiner will come a bunch of X-rays, and they'll keep on showing one X-ray after the other, and we had to just identify what it is. So that is why we used to teach students like this. If the radiography is there, it may be normal or abnormal. If it is abnormal, then there is a it may be radiolucent, radio-opaque, or mixed. If it is radiolucent, it may be well-defined or it may be ill-defined. Radiolucency, which is well-defined, may be unilocular, in which case it may be cyst, or it may be multilocular, in which case it may be benign tumor. But OKC and ABC and OKC can be multilocular. So that is what we used to tell about multilocular radiolucency. If it is ill-defined, either it is infection like osteomyelitis or it may be malignancy. Sometimes instead of radiolucency, the radio opacity is there, then it may be made up of bone, it may be made up of tooth, or it may be miscellaneous. If it is made up of bone, it may be osteoma. If it is made up of tooth, it may be odonto. Or if it is miscellaneous, then it may be salivary calculus. It is neither made up of tooth nor it is made up of a bone. If it is mixed, radio opaque as well as radiolucent, more likely to be fibroosseous lesion, then AOT, etc. So this is the three X-rays, three impacted teeth are there, pericoronal pathology. Here it is attached to C junction and totally lucent, and third molar, it is more likely to be a dentigerous cyst. Here what happens is, if you see here, calcification is seen, tooth is impacted, more likely to be AOT. So these are two cases of AOT and this is a dentigerous cyst. So they ask, then some peculiar appearances of benign tumor. Wirth has described spider type of appearance, where centrally there is a central structure from which peripheral striae will radiate like a gross caricature of a spider. Coarse strands of trabeculae or septa are there. So that is called as a spider appearance. Then spider web appearance. Then honeycomb appearance. Then this was one patient with a swelling by buccolingual swelling. Incidentally, if a benign tumor is there, it gives rise to buccolingual expansion, whereas cyst may give rise to only buccal expansion. Except if the cyst is present in the ramus region, because of the masseter insertion, the swelling is more on the lingual side. So medial expansion will be seen. So this lady presented with buccolingual expansion. We took OPG. It showed a multiple coarse strands of trabeculae. Then we took CBCT, it showed strings of tennis racket type of appearance. So trabeculae which are at right angles to each other, and this is particular condition is seen in which case it is seen in the Not finding the cursor. Sure. This is strings of a tennis racket appearance. This is seen in a odontogenic myxoma. So actually, I would like to tell here that the pathologist and radiologist have described so many appearances, and unfortunately, what happens is the typical appearance we never get. And so even if there is slight resemblance to a typical appearance, we are very much excited. We spotted this. And why this is happening is because biology and physics or mathematics are separate subjects. Mathematics 2 plus 2 is always equal to 4. But in biology or in biological sciences, so much variation is there that it is not likely to be the same again. So it is very strange phenomena that when we want that soap bubble means it should look like a soap bubble, it should look like spokes of wheel. It never happens like that because there is going to be variation from patient to patient. And so that way you have to remember that when they describe a particular appearance, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Okay, so this is a ameloblast. So one story about Dr. Annie John, very kind-hearted lady, and she used to make me expert when she was the examiner. So what I used to do is I used to stand outside her cabin, and she will put X-ray on the viewer, and I will see from outside, do extraoral diagnosis, and in the ear of that student I will whisper that. So one student came and she put an X-ray like this on the viewer. So I said, in his ear I whispered, soap bubble appearance, ameloblastoma. I said, thank you, sir. Then he went inside. Madam forgot. She has put this X-ray. She removed this X-ray and she put something like this X-ray. So the student sat down. He said, soap bubble appearance, ameloblastoma. The madam said, then this must be the soap which is producing the bubbles. So that was a joke. She had a fantastic sense of humor. So, and once one student had, she asked Viva question that name some opportunistic infections. So he said, the student said, do you know opportunistic? He said, yeah, of course I know. So what is the opportunity? He said, madam, syphilis. So madam said, not that opportunity. So opportunistic infection means candidiasis, which is commensal in the oral cavity, and AIDS patient will get it. So that is the thing. So this was a case of this is multilocular, of course, ameloblastoma, and this is a cyalolith. Okay. Just to lighten the mood, I told you that story, and this is a story about Dr. Surveyor. He used to tell me that I am going for exam somewhere, and now you give me the X-rays. He had a big collection, so I had to sort out the X-ray and give it to him. So then he suddenly turned and said that I am traveling by air, so I want to reduce the weight of my bag. So will you give me radiolucent lesion or radio-opaque lesion? Then I thought that this is a difficult Viva question that he's asking. So I said that's a radio-opaque lesion. So he said, yes, you are right, but why? Then he said that in radio-opaque area, that silver bromide is removed in the fixer. So here it is a transparent area. So the weight of that particular film is likely to be less. Said, yes, so that is the answer he wanted. Anyway, there are 3 radio opacities here. Here you find that there is a osteoma because it is made up of bone attached to bone. Here you find that there is salivary calculus because it doesn't show any trabecular and is separate. It is linearly placed, so calculus and osteoma. Here this is a fracture. It just looks spectacular, so I just wanted to share it with you. The patient has got hemangioma, purplish red color swelling. But as the rule says, that if you spot one particular abnormality, you should not relax your vigil. You continue to look for something else. So here, there was a swelling here on the lip. Maybe it's a part of hemangioma or it may be fibroepithelial polyp. Then there is a commissural pit here and there is a pigmented nevus here. So this was the additional findings which were there. Then in Viva, they will ask you that if the hemangioma is present in the bone, it gives rise to spokes of wheel appearance. If it is present within the mandible, what is the appearance? So then they say that if it is present in the mandible, what is the appearance? If it is present in the soft tissue, what will be the appearance? If it is present in the bone, spokes of wheel, if it is present in the soft tissue. So we said there is no appearance because it is in the soft tissue. But the answer is that it will show phleboliths. So these are the phleboliths, these are the calcified thrombi which are present. The blood becomes stagnated and becomes calcified, and then it gives rise to this calcified thrombi that is called as phlebolith. So phlebolith is a radiographic appearance. Now this is another case given by Ishwaran sir, and we find actually I had lot of odontomes, but I had got bored of them, so I like this one. You find that it looks almost like a tooth, and when we took X-ray, it showed this radio opacity, and CBCT showed different picture. And if the odontome is as opaque as a tooth material, it is surrounded by fibrous capsule, surrounded in turn by means of a radio opaque cortex. So this is typical of an odontome. Now we'll go to see some CT scan and CBCT. So this will be maybe more important to the PGs. That CT scan, fan shaped beam will rotate around the patient, and the patient moves upwards. And one scan takes place, second scan takes place like that. But in CBCT, only one rotation will take place, and the entire area is covered. And then you get 3 pictures, 4 pictures, 5 pictures. In fact, you can get OPG reconstruction. You can get a 3D image. Then you can get a, this is called as the axial section, then coronal section, and this is the sagittal section. So these are all things which are seen. You can hear me, no, sir? No problem,
sir.
no, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. So when you study CBCT, there is one interesting software they gave that is called as a toggle. It's like a crossbar. So now this lesion was there. In axial section, we saw buccal expansion, maybe a cyst or a tumor, and we put a crossbar here. So in the axial section, it is at this level. In the coronal section, that spot is where, and in the sagittal section, where it is. So if supposing this is very useful, because if you find something which you are unable to identify, then you put the crossbar there or the toggle there. Then in the other 2 sections, you can really find out what is the pathology. So this is the advantage of a CBCT. Okay. Landmarks which are not normally visible suddenly started, because this is the inferior alveolar, this is the lingual foramen and the canal. Here there is a nasopalatine canal. Here there is a mental foramen. So all beautiful pictures started becoming visible. And then you can rotate the mandible. So here you find that the normally if you take like this, sagittal section will look like this. But if you turn the mandible, you can with the software you can turn the mandible. You can get a better lateral oblique view. Otherwise, in the past we had to repeat the lateral oblique view if it was not covering. So that exposure would be reduced by not repeating the radiograph. Okay. Now this is a quiz for the PGs. They have to identify these landmarks. So first, this is which section? This is a coronal section of the CBCT, and this is a lateral pterygoid plate. Lateral pterygoid plate. And this, what it could be? You find that only bony structure in that infratemporal region is a zygomatic arch. So this is a zygomatic arch, and in the base of the skull, which is this foramen, this is the foramen oval. This is the foramen oval. Okay. CT scan advantage is that it shows the soft tissue also very nicely, whereas it has got a soft tissue window and a bone window. Bone window, the buccal cortical plate, lingual cortical plate, and trabeculae are seen when they are seen separately, and the trabecular spaces, trabecular spaces are appreciated. Then it's a bone window. When you find that everything appears white, then it is more likely to be soft tissue window. But soft tissue will show tongue musculature very nicely. So for PG students, one question that this dark shadow, and this dark. So this dark shadow is to be called as hypodense, and the white shadow is called as a hyperdense. So this is the, what is this structure? This is the oropharynx, nasopharynx, and the sphenoidal sinus. This is sphenoidal sinus, nasopharynx, and maybe part of the oropharynx. Okay. There is something called contrast enhancement in CT scan. That is the other advantage, that they inject contrast in the IV, and wherever there is more capillaries present, for example, surrounding the axis, there is hypervascularity is there, so there is more collection of dye will take place, and that is called as the peripheral enhancement. In the benign tumor, which is vascular, there will be more. For example, this was a case of a pleomorphic adenoma of the submandibular gland. The more collection of dye takes, so this is called enhanced. That area becomes lighted up. Okay. The most important use of CBCT for most practical and important use from our viewpoint and general practice, radiology practice will be implants. So implants, I will not go into more detail, but you can, what the implantologist wants to know, how far away he is from the inferior alveolar canal or the floor of the sinus, what is the quality of the bone which is there, so there is D1, D2, D3, D4, etc. How is the cortex, what is the angulation of the ridge, whether the ridge is good enough, whether the quality is good enough. So quality of bone is good. All these points will be clarified if you take a CBCT. So it will become almost, in some of the cases it has become indispensable. And some softwares are provided with the number of implants also, library of implants. So you can plan the implant by actually placing it, and then there is a implant guided implant surgery with they give a particular template, and that template is fixed, and then they can drill, and and you cannot go wrong in this case. So that is a guided implant surgery. Now endodontics also, CBCT is useful. Missed canals can be seen. For example, here there is a missed canal, or you can see one case here where there is a bifid canal in the premolar that can be seen very nicely in the CBCT. And this particular case, there were three. Normal there are MB1 and MB2. We struggle to find MB2 only, but there is MB3 also here. So the endodontists are specialists, so they can find out this MB3. So they found out 3 canals in the mesial root of the upper 6, and they filled it up. So this is the advantage of the CBCT. Palatal radicular groove, which I told you, see the groove clinically, it looks like this, and periodontal infection will take place, and it gives very clear picture on the CBCT. Now this patient had a root canal done for both the teeth, but one side the persistent discharge was there even after repeating for 2-3 times. So we could not make out what is the cause. If we give attention, we find that there is something wrong here, radiolucency. So we do CBCT, and it showed a external resorption. So this was the problem. This was the case of a fracture, cracked tooth. Cracked tooth was not seen IOPM, but it was seen nicely in the axial section and also in the coronal section. In orthodontics also, CBCT is of great use. Cephalometric tracing, some softwares are there, cephalometric tracing can be done. Impacted teeth, where they are placed, actual location of the tooth can be seen. Then in this case, it is OPG, IOPA will not tell us where this particular tooth is, but CBCT will definitely tell us where it is. So it has got a lot of advantages, but young patients are being exposed to CBCT. We should be a little cautious, and we should not expose the patient normally. Normally, first take OPG and make sure everything is okay. If some complication is there, only then advise CBCT, because the exposure is more. Now that the audience is fully anesthetized and only few people are awake, I'll go and show you little bit of oral surgical problems. The third molar, which is impacted. If you take CBCT, this is the crown of the tooth, and this is the canal, inferior alveolar canal. This is the crown of the tooth and the inferior alveolar canal. Here you can see that the crown, this is the distal root, this is the mesiolingual root, mesiobuccal root, and this is the canal. This is the distal root, this is the mesiolingual root, and buccolingual root. Canal is passing exactly in the center. So you can see how in this particular last, you can see the yellow thing is the yellow structure is the canal, and the 3 roots are seen separately. So it is very important to for the oral surgeon, because now he can be sure that he can tell there is a chances that there may be damage to the nerve if while removing the tooth, while this impaction. So he has to be very careful, slice the tooth, etc. So oral surgeons are expert, but still he can inform the patient beforehand that this particular case is a tough case. Young patient had trauma. Why I said he's young? After looking at his face, he looks old, but if you look at the X-ray, you find the root formation is incomplete. You can see one fracture here, but the patient went on complaining of pain in the TMJ region. He went on complaining of pain in TMJ region. We took CBCT, and CBCT showed sagittal split. You can see very interestingly the sagittal split, which was missed in the OPG, and it also showed occlusal view. Occlusal view would have shown this particular fracture with displacement, but CBCT also showed it. Now, maxillofacial trauma, CBCT is good, but which is a better radiographic technique for a maxillofacial trauma? So if there is head injury, even if you just suspect head injury, better to send the patient to CT scan, because intracranial subdural hematoma, intracranial hemorrhage, all these can be studied better on the CT scan. So per se, CBCT is not the ideal to study complex maxillofacial trauma, but still you can appreciate here in this particular case how the maxillary sinus lateral wall is fractured and buckling up is there. And what is this particular dark shadow? This is called as the air emphysema. Whenever the air space is fractured, air will escape into the soft tissue, and that gives rise to what is called as the air emphysema. So this is one of the important finding in the CBCT. Now this is a midline radiolucency seen by Dr. one of our students, Aejas Gogri, of course not a student, and he's a colleague. So it shows the median palatine cyst, incisive canal cyst. Okay. This lady presented with the elevated nostril on one side, and when we took radiograph, White and Farrow has mentioned that the radiograph normally will not show if it because it is present between the nose and the lip, nasolabial cyst, and but it does not give rise to any bony involvement. But still, the floor of the nasal cavity is displaced, and the orientation of nasal cavity is displaced. So the arrow will show towards the displaced nasal cavity. So this was the case of a nasolabial cyst. We took CBCT. CBCT showed nicely the lesion which is there here. You can see here nasolabial cyst. This was the case of a nasal. Chronic osteomyelitis discharging sinus, and one side the condyle is looking normal, the other side condyle is not seen at all. Lot of destruction. CT scan was done in this case, and advantage of CT scan was that you can see the mastoid hair cells present here, and one side the mastoid hair cells were opacified. That means there is infection of the mastoid also, middle ear also, and the condyle is seen here, condyle not seen here. So this is a case of a chronic osteomyelitis. Periosteal bone line was seen very nicely because young patient. So this was the case of a chronic osteomyelitis. Okay. Now there is a condition called as a proliferative osteitis, proliferative periosteoitis. So here you find that the bone formation keeps on taking place. First, there is a layering of the bone that is called as a what is that called? Onion skin appearance, but in between, after certain time passes, the space between the onion skins also will disappear. It will become totally condensed, and that may be called as a proliferative periosteoitis. In the new White and Farrow, there is a lot of here presented osteomyelitis in a very different way. But anyway, what you notice in the axial section is showing the expansion, but if you see the canals, they appear to be iatrogenically widened. You can see that the canals cannot be so wide. So you must, and if you see that dressing is there, that means they have tried to do the root canal opening. And maybe sometimes our bad habits of our patients is that once the root canal is done and pain has subsided, they will stop coming to the dentist. And then it has now gone into this particular stage. So this is a case of a proliferative periosteoitis. This was one case sent by Dr. Varun Manek, who is also one of our past students. And this lady was having CA breast, and she was on bisphosphonate. So this is a danger drug from the oral, this means jaw bones, because it causes osteonecrosis. So osteonecrosis can be caused by this particular drug, bisphosphonate, and it is given in patients who are having multiple myeloma, patients are osteoporosis. Actually, it is supposed to inhibit the action of osteoclast, and in CA breast patient, there may be effect on the bone which is taking place. The CA may be spreading in the bone, and somehow this bisphosphonate will stop the spread in the bony structure. So there may be, the patient may be having metastasis somewhere to restrict the action of the osteoclast, they have given it, and she presented with this typical osteomyelitis. You find that multiple sequestra are there, periosteal reaction is there. If the PGs are asked that what are the causes of osteonecrosis, so you should remember bisphosphonate, osteoiridia necrosis, then uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, then deep fungal infection. There are a number of cases. Then even herpes zoster. Sometimes it may be a complication of herpes zoster, that there may be a osteonecrosis. So these points you have to remember. So just to change the subject, I have a question. This lady asked, is this fellow's wife. She is a wizard. I have a question. Do I look fat to you? So he answers, do I look suicidal to you? Because if he really says that she is fat, then he is in danger. So, okay, now the UPG is for everybody to see. Which side is the pathology? Which side is the pathology? If you see here, Floor of the sinus intact here. Floor of the sinus is missing here. Floor of the sinus is missing here. So this is a pathology and it's actually floating teeth. So this was a case of a CA on one side. This is another patient who came with a female patient, pain and paresthesia on left side of the face. We took OPG. OPG showed that condyle on one side is intact and condyle on the other side could not be traced. There is also a radiolucency here, as if there is some radiolucent deposit there. Then we took CBCT. CBCT showed that the condyle is destroyed totally compared to the other side. So this was a case of a metastatic malignancy. She gave history of breast surgery, breast malignancy for which mastectomy was done, and we did SPECT CT and it showed a hotspot in the thymus area. And she also had pain in the pelvis, where the pelvic bones are affected, and there it turned out to be also showing up a metastatic malignancy. This was a young man with malignancy in the retromolar area. OPG didn't show much, but when we took CT, because he had a lymph node, we took CT scan. The CT scan showed that there is a big lesion, and in the lymph node, and within that lymph node there is an area necrosis. So oval or rounded lymph node with necrotic center is suggestive of a metastatic lymph node. So that you have to remember. Okay. This was another case, very luminous looking clinically. You find that buccolingual expansion is there, but something is wrong with this. It is looking too red in color and it is devoid of the mucosal coverage buccally. So it is looking like a ominous growth in the left maxilla, and his eye also is closed on one side. Nasolabial fold has disappeared, and we took OPG and we took Waters view. Waters view showed unilateral opacification, and OPG, if you see, it showed that one side that particular landmark that is called as a pterygomaxillary fissure present here and it is missing here. So when the pterygomaxillary fissure is missing, suspect that there is a big pathology which is causing the erosion of that particular bony wall. So it turned out to be a sunburst appearance of the osteogenic sarcoma. You can see here the sunburst appearance and a big lesion present here. So this was a case of a osteogenic sarcoma. Okay. Now CT and MRI, how to differentiate? Is it okay if I go beyond, sir, or should I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So CT scan and MRI, you can find here that the CT scan, it will appear as hyperdense. White area is called as hyperdense, that is the cortex. But if you see MRI, the cortex doesn't look white, it looks black. Cortex looks black and the bone marrow looks white. So this is a bony cortex, that is and this looks white. And this muscle on the lateral aspect of the ramus is the masseter muscle. The medial aspect of the ramus, it is the medial pterygoid muscle. And here there is a here the words used are hyperintense and hypointense. And the hypointense signal shadow here is the parotid gland. So this is how the MRI will look like. So I'll just show one or two cases of MRI also, just for completion. Then this is a question for the UG as well as for PG. One patient came with a swelling in the jaw and they removed that they enucleated the swelling and they put it into water, or they put it into the formalin or something, and it is floating. So if it is floating, what it is suggestive of? If the swelling floats in water, it is suggestive of what? So the answer is lipoma. So this was the case of a lipoma. The patient presented with a swelling here and they did MRI. Of course, I am not saying that MRI is required to diagnose this lipoma, but some patients will insist that we want all the investigations to be done. So it appeared as a hyperintense signal, very densely white, and they did the surgery and it turned out to be a lipoma. This was another case, unusual case, that patient complained of inability to open the mouth completely and we mistook it for a MPDS and we went on treating her, but it would not improve. And then there was a dissertation on the role of MRI in the diagnosis. So that PG student requested me, sir, can I take this case? I said, okay, we'll see what is wrong in the TMJ. So she took the radiograph, she took the MRI. So when we took the MRI, it showed a neurogenic tumor. See the neurogenic tumor here descending from the foramen oval. This arrow is the foramen oval. And if you see here, this is normal side, this is the condyle, cortex of the condyle, this is the lateral pterygoid muscle, but But the affected side, you find that there is no uh, muscle seen. Instead of that, there is a mass of tissue. This is that tumor. So this is a case of a neurogenic tumor. Then we went back to the OPG. Now see here, interestingly, that OPG shows that this this landmark which I keep on telling you is the pterygomaxillary fissure. It is present on one side. On this side, it is missing. So this we had missed on the OPG, and actually it had caused erosion. The lesion was coming from the infratemporal surface area, and it has caused the erosion of that particular area. So this was the case of a neurogenic tumor. Now in the report sometimes they give what is called as vessel encasement. So see, when the MRI is done, in the case of a malignancy involving the floor of the mouth and very big lymph node involvement, this case was done, and then they showed that two things. One was that the big lesion is there, and this dark area is the blood vessel, and it is surrounded by the blood vessel. So the blood vessel is surrounded by the tumor mass of the lymph node, and therefore this is called as vessel encasement. So this becomes a problem for the surgery. At the same time, the white arrow is showing the compression of the airspace. The airspace is displaced and compressed. So that is also seen here. Now there is something called a facial plane. So if you see this benign tumor, you find that there is a cortex of the mandible, and this is the soft tissue of the floor of the mouth and the tongue, whereas there is a space can be delineated between the two. So this is called a facial plane, whereas here you find that the space is not delineated. It is a malignant tumor, and everything is occupied by that, everything is destroyed by the malignant tumor. The same thing happens in infection also. The facial planes will disappear. So disappearance of facial plane is an important indicator for either a malignancy or an infection which is growing through the facial spaces and the muscles and all that. So that is one important point which you have to remember. Now this particular cat has come. That means I am relaxed. Now I will be asking you questions. I want to see whether you are actually in front of the computer, or you are in the kitchen, or you are eating and relaxing, or fallen asleep. I remember there was one senior person who used to sit in the first row of the during conference and fall asleep, and his snoring will wake up the others. So one is benign and one is malignant. Which is benign? So you can see here smooth round continuation corticated well-edged benign. Here floor of the sinus is destroyed, irregular bone loss floating to the appearance, malignant. Okay. Now, what do you think is this condition for the PGs? What do you think this is most likely to be? So this is showing like a sequestrum bone which is trying to separate out from the bone. So this is typical osteomyelitis. Okay. This particular patient is suffering from ortho treatment, and also he is suffering from something else. So what are these multiple radio opacities? So this appearance, they have described it as a cauliflower appearance, and that is seen typically in a calcified lymph node. So calcified lymph node gives rise to this cauliflower appearance. Now, this is a quiz for the PGs, that there is a radio opacity seen close to the floor of the antrum. Radio opacity seen close to the floor of the antrum. So what it could be? So we thought maybe it is cementoblastoma which is left behind after extraction. Maybe it is hypercementosis. Maybe it is odontome. So what it could be? Then this Dr. Varun Manek, then he took his history of this patient, and it turned out that nowadays what they do, they are so desperate that they want to put the implant at any cost. Sorry that I am trying. I just take it. I am a little backward type of fellow. So, but they want to raise the sinus. So sinus extension. So this is a radiopaque material which they have put to raise the floor of the sinus. So osteoid material, bone graft material which is kept. So this is the quiz. Okay. Which side is the pathology in this X-ray? Which side is the pathology? So if you see here, both sides you can see the styloid process elongated. But if you see maxillary sinus, this looks normal. But here the floor of the sinus is elevated. So either there is a benign tumor or a cyst on the left side of the maxilla. So when we took CBCT, it showed that particular saddling effect, and it is a benign tumor or a cyst in the left side of the maxilla. Okay, this is a landmark quiz for the PGs. What is this arrow pointing at? If you see here, there is a ramus. This is condyle. This is a ramus. So what this could be? Sorry, this could be the tip of the carotid. Tip of the carotid. This is vertebral column, and this is the condyle. Between the vertebral column and the condyle, there is a radio-opaque. Sorry. So what this could be? So this is a styloid process, and this radiolucency and opacity, what this could be in the nasal cavity. So this is called as a nasal concha. This is called as a concha or a concha bullosa. It is called as a concha bullosa, where it is a hyper pneumatized middle concha. Pneumatized middle concha is called as a concha bullosa. So this is one of the variations of the turbinate bones. Turbinates or middle concha will get sometimes it will get swollen, and also it has got pneumatized. So this is called as a concha bullosa. So this is a MRI, and where do you think is the pathology? If you ask like this, when we were doing dissertation on MRI, we could not interpret anything. So what I used to tell the student, you just show me the MRI. I'll first try to say, where is the pathology? So that was my method. I will say that there is collection of fluid here. It is called as hyperintense signal, or it is called as a, what we call it as a effusion within the sinus. These are the conchae, this is the sinus, this is the orbit. Any other pathology? So you can see here, there is hyperintense signal here, this is the tongue. And in the floor of the mouth and in the base of the tongue, there is a malignancy, and therefore it is looking like this. So this was a case of a malignancy which was seen there. So there are 10 commandments. I think many years back in Goa, I had given this lecture, 10 commandments. So what is the summary of all this? What commandments, what you should think before you interpret the X-ray? First thing is you master the anatomy. You must know the anatomy. You master the pathology. You must know what is the pathology. Correlate pathology and the radiograph. How the pathological entity changes the bony structure or tooth structure, and how it affects the radiograph. Then, if supposing there is some artifact, do not interpret imperfect radiograph. If there is artifact, don't try to interpret it. Take another X-ray. Study the radiograph in entirety. I study all the corners, as I showed you 2-3 examples where the corners showed other pathologies. Never relax your vigil. I told you that if you see, I had one X-ray I didn't show today. There one big odontome was there, and there was another small odontome at some other place. So once you see that odontome, you forget about that and concentrate on the remaining X-ray and study the other X-ray, other parts of the X-ray. So never relax your vigil. Obtain all indicated radiographs. So supposing sometimes it may so happen that in one radiograph you have missed the pathology, in the other you may find it. For example, we could never see a calculus present when we are taking occlusal, but when we took lateral oblique, we could see it. So take all indicated radiographs. We study the radiographs without any prejudice. Somebody sent me a patient, then referring to you a patient with malignancy, kindly do the needful. So then I went on looking for irregular bone loss, but actually it was very well demarcated. So it was a benign tumor. So whenever anybody sends you, still you close your mind and study the patient as a new patient, your own patient, and without any prejudice, you study the case and give the report. Then another thing is about CBCT, you study all the areas and report everything that you see, because it is going to be medico-legally also important that if you spot something, if you don't spot it, they may hold you responsible that you have seen it but you have not reported it. So you have to be very careful about this. Then accept and welcome both basic as well as advanced. The old timers like me will say, what is there in advanced? It is not so important. And the newcomers will say, basic is boring, so don't take that basic. But you have to accept and welcome both basic as well as advanced, and take the best of both the worlds, and do not judge the clinician. That means in the past, in GDC and I don't know, so we used to be sarcastic. Then we'll say, supposing the root canal is very short, so we'll say, keep trying, you will reach. Supposing they have gone beyond the apex, so you will write, you have arrived, like that. So you don't try to be judgmental about the clinician, and make the report very tactful, and should not cause much more harm to the patient. Means patient might read that report, so you have to be very, very careful how you word that report. And you should never judge the clinician, because they are in their own world, we are in our world, and our world is very beautiful. I feel that they used to call it, there is one diagram in White and Farrow. The lonely radiologist. The radiologist will sit in the corner, he'll study the X-ray, enjoy the anatomical landmarks, pathology, interpretation, describe it in detail. And our life is different, theirs is different. We are not clinician. Of course, now, yesterday's lecture I enjoyed because he said that radiologist, oral medicine specialist will make very good practitioners. That also I agree that we should, but still the point is that you should not judge the clinician. Nothing is impossible for the man who doesn't have to do it himself. Dr. Ashish and Dr. Akshay help. These are the old PG students. This is my old slide, but I have not removed it. So somebody else has done all this and I am presenting it. My thanks to Dr. Pawar, ex-dean, Dr. Vivek Pakmode, present dean, Dr. Neeta Mohanty, dean of Institute of Dental Science, Bhubaneswar, Dr. Satyaranjan Mishra, organizing secretary. Then the organizing team of the webinar series, Dr. Ishwaran Ramaswamy, Dr. Aparajita, Dr. Shraddha Jukade, staff and PG students of GDC and H Mumbai. And these are our staff members. We were Dr. Danny John in the center, Dr. Surveyor, myself, and all these other people. They are HODs on there now, and I feel very proud of them. Thank you.